Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. And today's video I've contemplated making over the last few days as I've read more and more information on this subject. Where did I put my water? I'm going to pause it real quick. But I've contemplated making this video for a while, and I think I've got to toss my 2 cents into the ring. So, I've watched a lot of podcasts and different news outlets talking about, the Civil War. Are we in one? Is it a cold Civil War at the moment? Can we stop what's happening? And, is there stopping, or it's only going to get worse until, we finally snap? I don't like to smoke in my car very often because it makes it smell. So, the first thing that I have on this list is from my home state, Texas, and one of our representatives submitting a bill that has been formally filed and, accepted by the GOP in the state of Texas. And it's to allow a vote on whether or not Texas should leave the Union. And there's a giant myth amongst Texans that, we came into this as a sovereign country, so we can leave whenever we want to. And there's a huge pride thing in Texas. Everything's bigger than Texas. There's a lot to go into. I can make a whole video talking about why Texas should be its own country, and I'd probably get a lot of people to watch it. And the counter argument came from, USS Grant, and, he wrote, I don't know if it was in his diary, if he wrote it for a paper or speech, I don't remember. But he said, you can't just leave because, the death and sacrifice from the Union means you have a debt to pay. Essentially, you made us fight to keep us one nation, so you've got to stick around, kind of thing. And, there was a poll done by CNBC or MSNBC, one of those news outlets, and it was like 30% said yes and 69% said no. But I didn't hear if it all came from the state of Texas. I think it was a national poll. But it's the only thing this bill does is lets the people in the state of Texas decide if they want to leave. It doesn't say, if they get a majority, we can leave. There's got to be, an Article 4, referendum of states and all these other things. And most likely something won't happen with that. But you pair that with the left wanting D.C. and Puerto Rico to be a state. And not much I want to talk about there. But it's an issue that the right doesn't like because for the most part over the last 40 or so years, we've kind of gone back and forth between a left-leaning and a right-leaning president. The House and the Senate have flipped back and forth. And a bunch of people think if you add 4 more senators we already know they would be left-leaning, then it makes it nearly impossible for, there to ever be a right-leaning Senate or a right-leaning House kind of thing. And on the right, there are 5 counties in Oregon that, are not the major cities in the blue state that would like to leave and go to Idaho. Idaho, or is it Utah? I think it's the Greater Idaho Movement. Yeah, that's it. And then Northern California wants to make Jefferson a state, and Wells County wants to break off from Colorado. And so on the right side, they want these counties to be absorbed into red-leaning states that, better represent them. Because with the example with Oregon, their grievances is they didn't vote for this. They mostly live, much further away from the cities, and these just densely urban populated areas are making all the decisions, and they feel like they aren't being represented. And here recently, the state was getting, COVID relief and vaccines and stuff. And for the most part, most of those resources were going to their constituents, the people inside the cities and stuff. And the people out in the rural area just felt like they were being mistreated. A couple of the counties have already voted and said, yes, we want to leave. And the other two or three are leaving or are voting to leave in May or April of this year. Tie that in with everything else going on between, the social media aspect of, you have so many strikes, so we're going to remove you, or we don't like your content, you're going to get removed. We don't like the way you talk, so you're going to get fired from your job and basically get pushed out of your career or your area or whatever because the stuff just doesn't align with you. And the reason why this is an issue is because a lot of people are saying, we're either on the road to a civil war or we need a peaceful divorce. And so I don't lean towards the side of a peaceful divorce. I don't think any side would want to agree to split up. I definitely think it will, come down to fighting. But as one person mentions a lot, and I think he's onto something, this fight that we're in as of right now is fifth generational warfare or propaganda. Whoever controls the entertainment, the culture, the institutions of education, that kind of thing, they're the people that are going to set up, the next generation to be more leaning in their direction. So I'm pretty sure you've all heard of, all the colleges are liberal and they're brainwashing you. And, all the movies they're making, they have to tie in diversity or, make it about social justice or whatever. I just heard about this the other day. They're rewriting, the storyline of Static Shock. Doesn't really have much to do with prepping, but, his old storyline was, he showed up at an area where gangs, frequently met and they were going to have a gang war. And he had been bullied, most of his life in school, and he had a gun and he was going to shoot his bully. And right before he did it, he said, no, I can't do this. I'm not a killer. The cops were going to raid this gang, and he got caught up in the middle of it. An experimental gas was used. Everyone got powers. So all the gang members became supervillains, and the kid that, didn't want to be there in the first place and couldn't kill his bully to get revenge or whatever, ended up becoming the superhero. And now, Static Shock gets his powers by having tear gas shot at him at a Black Lives Matter rally. So, rewritten his story completely along the lines of, they have definitely made the cops the bad guys. We don't know how, his villains within this comic book are going, like, everyone gets their powers from, this tear gas. Um, but, who's like, he has to fight bad guys because, superhero comics and stuff. Um, but the way it stands as of right now, the bad guys and apparently the good guy were there together to fight the bad guys, which are the cops. And the issue with that is people will read these comics and it will, raise children to believe that all cops are just there to tear gas you and, harm you, you know, and it's all part of the culture war. A lot of the preppers, they always talk about the food and the ammo and the water and, the fortress that they're creating. But, it will be much further down the line of when you actually have to pull the trigger of that firearm to defend your family, your way of life, your values, that kind of thing. They're very smart with the way that they're slowly eroding what, the country is founded on, kind of thing. So not only should you prepare for, the Red Dawn style, assault on the country. What's that? But you also need to consider, how your kids are being raised, what political actions you're taking, and, just becoming better educated on this idea and, learning what areas you can compromise in, what areas you can't, will probably benefit the nation. Most people will say, you know, we've compromised on so many things up until, the 2000s, and we've gotten to the point where there's no more compromise. And it's become so hyper polarized that each time each group gets into power, they do everything they can as fast as they can, and the next group comes in and reverses a lot of those things. Um, there was a poll done. It was specifically for Republicans and Democrats, and they asked what's the biggest issue for Republicans, and they said illegal immigration, taxes. Those are their top two, and for Democrats, it was Trump supporters and white supremacy. So take all this information with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to make this channel political, but I think most preppers tend to lead on the writer side of things. First and foremost, one of the top 5 things about prepping is security and protection. And so you're going to need firearms, and any attack on the firearms is going to weaken your position as a prepper. And so, do I think a civil war is going to happen? It's possible. I'm not condoning violence. I really like to see myself in the position that Mel Gibson was in The Patriot. Not wanting to get involved until it's absolutely necessary. I could definitely see getting involved a little sooner, but not in like the hot conflict type of thing. Definitely talk to your representatives about issues that you agree with or disagree with. Talk with family. Like, I've always told myself, my grandma is definitely left leaning. And we have had political discussions all the time. We don't hate each other. We have different areas where we have compromised in. Same thing with my aunt. And, you know, I feel like it starts at the family level of compromise. Because if, a few million families can compromise on something, then, 500 people in Congress can definitely compromise on things. So, again, I don't think we are anywhere near a hot conflict. I definitely think we're in some sort of Cold War styled civil war based off of culture and, you know, who's controlling how the next generation will vote kind of thing. It's not really, you grow up through high school, you get into college, and then you kind of figure out your own political identity on your own. It's almost like people are being shepherded into, one or the other. But what are your comments on this topic? Not really, a prepping video, just it's useful information to have as a prepper. And if you enjoyed it, then like the video. If you enjoyed what I'm doing with the channel, then subscribe. I make videos at least once a week, some multiple times a week. Just depends on my school schedule. Oh, what's in my eye? And lastly, if you have a friend or family member that would benefit from the information discussed in this video, then share it with them. And I'll quit rambling on, and I'll catch you in the next one.